Hey everyone, geophysicist Stefan Burns here. We currently have some space weather that is headed our way. There is a coronal hole high-speed stream which is about to impact us, and at the leading edge of that there is a co-rotating interaction region, a region of dense plasma, and we had two plasma filaments launched from the sun back on May 5th and also May 6th that are very likely to reach up to that high-speed stream, that co-rotating interaction region. All that is soon to come in. We're seeing enhancements in the solar wind. So we're going to discuss that in today's video, what's happening right now in terms of the solar activity and in general, the solar wind and the space weather. But there's also something on the far side of the sun, which is quite significant. We've seen this very large coronal hole 8 times now, each solar rotation being about 28 days. And it got anomalously large on its 7th rotation, and it stayed very large on its 8th rotation, maybe even got slightly bigger. Well, we have far side imagery of the sun right now. We don't always have imagery of the far side, but we do right now because of the position of the solar orbiter probe. It's exactly 180 degrees opposite where we are now. And so we actually have some imagery of the far side. And it looks like this coronal hole, which is basically 180 degrees opposite us right now as well. It's actually 180 degrees opposite this sunspot group right there. So it is about to rotate into view, starting to rotate into view. It looks like it's gone bigger, and it looks like it's gone significantly bigger. So we are going to discuss that in today's video because this will be the 9th rotation of that coronal hole. There's a good amount of research out there discussing the effects of coronal hole high-speed streams and their effect on the geophysics of the Earth. So this could be, for example, weather, specifically like severe weather. They seem to enhance any sort of severe weather like cyclones, or they make tornadoes more likely. This is preliminary evidence, but it seems to, we know there's a strong connection between these coronal hole high-speed streams and vorticity. And also we're seeing hailstorms become really common around the globe right now, which is odd, and it's likely due to a variety of factors, but these coronal hole high-speed streams could be one of those factors driving that. But they also have a connection to earthquakes. And since rotation number 7, when this coronal hole got very, very large, we've had some significant earthquakes. A magnitude 7.7 in Myanmar, Burma back on March 28th. And then also just recently, magnitude 7.4 off the southern tip of South America. And so what will rotation number 9 bring? 9 being a number of endings, a conclusion, a climax to a cycle. So Earth has chosen, with its location in the solar system at 1 astronomical unit, it has chosen the insane mode of difficulty in this simulation that we live in. And we are about to approach a boss fight for sure with this 9th coronal hole rotation, especially because it looks like it's gone very, very large. So we're going to get into that, but we'll start with our current space weather conditions. Here we have the sun in 304 angstroms going from May 5th to the 9th, 2025. And we see these plasma filaments launch off there. And you'll notice, basically during this time frame, a whole bunch of activity with plasma filaments across the Earth-facing side of the sun. So we have a new one that's rotating into the Earth center zone right here. That one looks like it may perhaps launch off as well. But in general, the biggest thing that we have are the 2 plasma filaments. There's that first one that launched on the 5th, and official space weather forecasters are thinking that one's fairly direct actually to hitting us and will give us a flank impact. And then we get that one, but also this guy up top launched. That one looks like it's going a little south, but I think combined, they're going to reach up with the coronal hole high-speed stream that we have coming in. And it looks like we're already having an enhancement in the solar wind right now at this moment in time. So we're at the very leading edge of this, this potential solar storm impact as a result. But you also will notice over here, let me zoom forward a little bit so we get there right away. But you'll notice right here, after all that activity, right, we see this plasma filament do a huge launch. I did a post on that on YouTube earlier, about a day or 2 ago, as well on Twitter X. So you can see that video if you just go to my community tab or my profile on either. That was really significant, a huge filament launch, but not Earth directed. But in general, it just seems that there was a pretty sudden shift that occurred around May 5th when all these plasma filaments started to destabilize one after another. Whereas before that, things were fairly quiet. They were hanging out. They weren't really doing much. This sunspot group right there, 4079, is quite large. It has a fairly complex magnetic field, not the most complex. It has been stable with its flaring. It really hasn't done much. No M-class flares from it since it initially rotated onto the scene over here. We see Earth Center direct there, did not send a solar storm our way. Instead, it was all these plasma filaments that have launched some stuff our way. So let us check our latest space weather model by the UK Met Office, and we'll see what they think these plasma filaments are going to do. And I'm actually going to pause it at the beginning because this is the earliest that this model is set to now. So we see the first one there that was launched on the 5th. That one at this time in their model is in this location, about 0.75 astronomical units. The Earth is right there. This is the sun. We're looking top down. Here we're looking kind of at a cross section. So this is south, this is north. You see the other plasma filament that launched off there. That one's more on this Earth-Sun alignment, whereas this one is a little bit like that. But you'll notice this one here was wider, and that one there seems to go further south. Let me hit play now. So you can see that their model does not show them catching up to each other. I think we're likely, though, maybe they're not exactly like combined 100%, but I think we are going to get kind of a 1-2 punch from that, and also from the coronal hole high-speed stream that is due to sweep by basically at any moment. We're not in it right now because we know solar wind velocity is only about 430 kilometers per second. I will show that to you in just a second, but let me pull up this coronal hole first that we have on the sun, because this will also give you an understanding of what we have coming our way. So here we have, we're looking at imagery of the sun, 211 angstrom view, which is just a specific wavelength of light, and they put a certain color on it to help differentiate between the different wavelengths. And so we're seeing specific features on the sun. And here we really see the corona very nicely. The corona is the outermost part of the sun, the atmosphere, very highly vibrational, temperature in the millions of degrees Kelvin, and it's from the corona that you get the outflows of the solar wind. And so the corona is very bright, but when you have gaps in the corona, you get these dark spots. And you can't see these with the naked eye, though, like sunspots on the sun. If you have eclipse glasses, you can actually see sunspots on the sun. But coronal holes you cannot see with your own naked eye, but they show up dark in these select images. And they are areas where the corona basically doesn't exist. There's very low density to it. The plasma density is gone. The temperature is also lower. The magnetic field is open, and so it emits out into space and changes the properties of the interplanetary magnetic field and the solar wind. Typically, they emit these high-speed stream of ions, so these charged particles like protons flow out of them at a very high velocity, and the density of them is very low. That seems to have a connection to high-magnitude earthquakes. We've been tracking that on the channel, as many of you are well aware, all the return viewers. This is a fairly large coronal hole. It's not tiny. This would be like a tiny one right there. This isn't huge, but it's probably right in that moderate zone. So this is definitely one to watch, and we're about to have that hit us because it's entering into the geoeffective position right now. This one is kind of rotating through geoeffective right now, but this little lobe of it is smaller. That is definitely bigger. It's not exactly on the ecliptic plane, so some of that high-speed stream may flow to the south of the planet, but in general, that should be close enough to the equator for that to cause an enhancement of the solar wind. And it's likely to come in today because, again, if I zoom this forward all the way to the end, yeah, we see how that was geoeffective basically right there. And it's going to, geoeffective is maybe just a little bit more, so maybe like more like right there. So it's right now entering into that zone. That is a coronal hole. Let me show you the coronal holes that we've had over the past basically 2 months or so, and this imagery goes to the end of April, and we will see coronal hole rotation number 7, this thing that's lurking on the far side. This was rotation number 7 of this coronal hole. It got larger each and every time. This is a big one. Right as this went geoeffective, just a couple of days later, we had the magnitude 7.7 earthquake in Myanmar, Burma, also a 6.7 aftershock there, also a 6.6 earthquake and a 6.1 earthquake on a mid-ocean ridge. Then that rotated out of view. We had these coronal holes here. We had those recently just pass us on their rotation as well. But you'll see rotation number 8 come up right here. And I'll zoom forward a little bit for you. Notice the date. This is now mid-April. And we see rotation number 8 coming up. And there it is. And you'll notice that it was very large as well for rotation number 8, perhaps even bigger. So you see it stretching like this through the southern hemisphere, but also building a little bit up here in the top as well. Whereas if you go back to rotation 7, you see that it also had some right in the middle, but also up top there. It seems that we lost a little bit of that middle portion with rotation 8, but some of that upper coronal hole in the northern hemisphere still remaining. Well, let's check out what we have on the far side right now, and this will be rotation number 9. So to do that, we'll go to our solar orbiter webpage here. BOSPHY is coming up. The BOSPHY is coming up, and we on Earth chose a difficulty of insane. So here we have our latest imagery from the solar orbiter probe, and I think they post an update every day on the sun. Unfortunately, they don't have a video. That's probably a higher level product. And this is tilted, by the way. So this is not the right alignment. You can see here that they have like a little wire mesh sun. They show the tilt on it. So I corrected the photos in Photoshop. We're going to look at that in a second. But I just want to show you, this is the latest 304 angstrom view that they have. And this is the latest 174 angstrom view of the sun from solar orbiter. And if we go down to right here, here's the Earth, there is solar orbiter. So this is a probe that's flying around the inner solar system. Sometimes it's in this alignment in front of the Earth with the sun. So it's an advanced probe for space weather in terms of the solar wind characteristics, which we can register and read there. Right now, it's basically exactly opposite the Earth. And so what we're seeing with solar orbiter is the far side. And so let's look at this 171 or this 304 angstrom view in Photoshop, because we can see these coronal holes a little bit better if we go there. Here we have Earth facing right now. And this is just a screenshot from today, 1438 UTC, and you'll see these coronal holes right there. So it's a little difficult to see in the 304 angstrom view, but it's the best we got because you don't see them really at all in the 170-ish angstrom view. So with the 304, you can still kind of make out these coronal holes. And to give you the perspective once more, let me go here and just overlay that really quick. So I can kind of toggle between these. So again, the coronal hole right there, and we see it's a darker zone right there. So that's our coronal hole. We can make that out fairly clearly. The 304 angstrom will also darken these filaments. So see how these filaments there, they also show up kind of the same darkness level on the sun. So keep that in mind. But this big region there, that's the coronal hole. Now let me go in and adjust the characteristics of this image so we can pull out some features a little bit better. To do that, we'll have to go here and we'll change the exposure. And actually I can just click it on and that should basically do it. I can play with it a little bit more if need be. But now that I've adjusted the levels on this, we see that that coronal hole shows up nicely now on our current 304 angstrom view. This is Earth facing. If we go over here, here we see the coronal hole, rotation number 8, but now soon to be rotation number 9. We see that it looks very similar as well. If I click over here really quick, and let me actually zoom this over rotation number 8. That should do it right there, okay? So that's what rotation number 8 looked like. Now if I go back to our display capture, you'll see a similar structure right there. You see how it kind of has this pattern and there's this bright spot in between. Again, if I turn this off, you see that bright spot in between. This is shifted further to the south because this angle is actually looking at a little bit top down. You'll see that better with the intensity gram, but I guess I can show you that right now. if we look at our sunspots right here, see how this is the absolute north pole of the sun. We're looking slightly down on it as a result. Yeah, see how we're looking slightly top down on it right there? Okay, so we're looking at everything slightly at an angle as compared to our actual view. So keep in mind that this is actually a little bit higher up than our perspective from the Solar Orbiter probe. But you see this dark spot, it looks fairly the same as it did when it rotated out of view back in mid-April. But look now at the darkness here. So that looks like it's really strengthened. The coronal hole that was extending up is strengthened. It looks like it's also strengthened there. And in fact, a lot of this is looking like a coronal hole now. I would say, you know, this section right here is maybe not as dark as like that section or this section, but it looks like the northern extent of this coronal hole has grown very large. So this could be the biggest that has ever been by far, if that's the case. Again, it's difficult with this 304 angstrom view to make a clear 100% determination, but adjusting the gamma levels on this looks like this coronal hole has grown significantly on the far side, and that may remain in place when it rotates into view, starts to rotate into view in just a few days. So we see that this is now starting to rotate like that, and so we're going to get a view of this in about, we're going to start to be able to see this part of it in just maybe about 2-3 days or so. And once it's Earth center, we'll get a really clear view as to what this looks like. That's going to be maybe in about, that should be right around May 15th or so. So we're approaching kind of that time. This is already not centered up. It's already starting to get closer to this, the eastern limb of the sun. This is eastern limb on the Earth-facing side, so this would be the eastern limb on the Earth-facing side as well. But this is the far side. So that is looking really serious. And we can look at our 171 angstrom view of the sun right here. The other thing to take note of is that there are more sunspots on the far side of the sun right now as well. We have the Earth-facing side. We see 3079. We do have some other sunspots right there. But in general, it looks like there's more sunspots spread out across the far side. That was the case with rotation number 8, is that we had the coronal hole down there. We had a whole bunch of sunspots above it, and it looks like they're still there. So sunspot numbers are really low right now. And that is then going to likely rebound pretty sharply. If I exit out of Photoshop, we can actually look at our current sunspot numbers, just to get that in front of your eyes. And we see that the sunspot values for May have been really low so far. So here we have sunspots. Back at the end of April, we went up to 200 for our daily count. We stayed there for 2-3 days. Then we went down below 50, and we have stayed under basically 100. Our average is looking like it's right at 80 for the month, which is very low. Our last average was around 140. We're only a third of the way into May. That sunspot number will climb up as we have the sun rotate with these new sunspots into view. But in general, sunspot numbers are also low, which is maybe what is allowing this really large coronal hole to kind of take over the sun. Again, we're not 100% certain as to the extent of the coronal hole because we're looking at the 304 angstrom view, but it does appear to have grown significantly larger, especially in the northern hemisphere. So now you have both parts of the sun basically like a wall emitting this high-speed stream, and that's going to sweep by, and that's likely going to be pretty significant. So that's what's on the far side, and that would definitely be a boss fight. Because here we look at our global seismic activity, and there's quite a bit of research connecting coronal hole high-speed streams to high magnitude earthquakes and just in general global seismicity. This is for 2025. So we have our 7.7 earthquake right there. These earthquakes right there were right at the last third of March. So March 25th was this one right there. March 21st was that one, just for the day. And that coronal hole, rotation number 7, really started to show up Earth center right around March 21st, 22nd. So right when it really made its appearance and got in line with the Earth, we started having a lot of global seismic activity. Our activity level went to high for a lot of these days, also into the very high and extreme level. That was a magnitude 7 earthquake in Tonga. This is our 7.4 southern part of South America, just right off the coast in Drake's Passage. Just the past few days, we've only been in moderate activity. We haven't had any magnitude 6s for a while. But with this coronal hole rotating through with rotation number 9, that is looking pretty significant, because if it's the largest it's ever been, and we've been seeing how rotation 7 and 8 have caused this increase in global seismicity, what's rotation number 9 going to do? Especially when you pair that with the really significant heliocentric planetary geometry that's active on May 17th. I've been discussing that on the channel. I'm not going to go into detail on that, but we have all the planets in a geometric relationship with very specific angles on and around May 17th. So we have Venus opposite Jupiter, we have Earth opposite Uranus, that's a Uranus-Cassini. We have Mars opposite Saturn, and Neptune is there. Mercury is just having swept by the two of them. Pluto and Uranus are in a trine configuration. All the planets are, Jupiter is square, so all the planets are in this geometric relationship on the 17th, and there's research indicating, we have data indicating that that is connected to disturbances with the sun and also geomagnetic disturbances. The exact mechanism, still don't 100% know. There's some ideas out there, based on electromagnetic signals and such. But regardless, really significant planetary geometry on the 17th. Rotation number 9, this coronal hole, 9 being a number of endings. Uranus-Cassini is all about these sudden dramatic changes, and Uranus is the planet linked to earthquakes and electricity and storms and more. So yeah, it's looking like rotation number 9 may be a little wild if this coronal hole that we're seeing here does have the extent that it appears to based on the imagery from the Solar Orbiter probe. That's exactly 180 degrees opposite the Earth right now on the far side. Let us go to our real-time solar wind, and we have that right here. Pull up our real-time solar wind. It looks like we're starting to enter into this high-speed stream, though the velocity hasn't gone up yet, but we're seeing that the solar wind has been strengthening and the density is slowly increasing as well. So we have a 3-day view here. This is measured at the L1 Lagrange point, so 1% of the distance from the Earth to the Sun. So it gives us about a 1-hour heads up. And we see that this is 3 days ago. We see that our solar wind strength was about 4 to 5 nanotesla. This is all at 4. That's normal. 5 nanotesla is about the average for the solar wind in quiet conditions. There are some secular variations going from solar minimum to maximum, but right now, general is about 5 nanotesla for average. The red line is the southward component. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but we see that density back here was under 1 or so. This is 1 particle per cubic centimeter. We see that the speed was coming off of a increase going up to about 800 or so kilometers per second. Then we see that we've been down here in fairly low velocity conditions, just hovering around 420 just recently, 420 to 450 or so. Density has increased. So we were back at 1 over here. Now we're up to about 5 or so, which isn't anomalously high. Really high would be like 20, 30, even like 50 particles per cubic centimeter. But certainly the density has gone up. But you'll notice the interplanetary field strength is now at 9. So nearly double average. Nothing yet in the super anomalous range. If we do get a really big plasma pileup from those filaments at launch and the co-rotating interaction region at the front of that high-speed stream, then we could see that spike up more. But we see that our southward component there, a specific vector orientation in the magnetic field, and if that goes negative, that connects really nicely to Earth's magnetic field. That is going now into that negative territory, and actually quite strongly at -8. And so this is just starting to roll in at this moment in time. Don't know how long that's going to last, but as of right now, if that stays in that southward negative zone and the interplanetary magnetic field stays around 9 or 10, that could all of a sudden start to trigger some geomagnetic storming, likely of a G1 level, unless that magnetic field, the interplanetary magnetic field, increases beyond 9. If it goes to 15, then we could, perhaps, and this stays negative, sharply negative, then we could get to G2. This would have to probably go beyond 15 for us to get G3. And that's possible. It's not that big of a jump if you get a pileup of plasma that hits. But we know we're not in the high-speed stream yet because this solar wind velocity is still low. Once that starts to increase, once we're past that plasma pileup, that should likely go up to about 500, 550, 600, maybe beyond that, unless that high-speed stream is really flowing south of the ecliptic plane and it misses us. But I don't think that's going to be the case. Again, we have our 211 angstrom view here, and while it is not exactly on the equator of the sun, it's not super far down, so far south that we're unlikely to experience an enhancement. And we also have this coronal hole up there to the north as well. So the two together are going to enhance that solar wind along that ecliptic sun-Earth plane. So that is expected to really go geo-effective in probably less than 12 hours now. So that's happening. We have our HB30 and HB60 index here, so we can see what's been happening with geomagnetic activity. And if we look at our past 10 days, we see that we haven't registered that spike in activity yet because this is just happening at this moment in time. Here we had a very long duration geomagnetic storm like this. We've kind of cooled off, a little bit of an uptick, but nothing to write home about yet, but that could change pretty quickly. And we have our latest earthquakes here, just to see if anything has popped off while we've done the live stream. Nothing super significant for the past few days, as I said. The kind of the interesting thing that I've noticed, though, is that there's actually been a lot of earthquakes around Texas in this area, just in the past 24 hours, but even beyond that. If we go to past 7 days, right here, Texas has had a lot of earthquakes. We had that magnitude 5.4, and then there's just been a whole bunch of magnitude 3s in this area. And so these are likely induced by fracking, because they actually, are injecting these fluids underground, causing these shale rocks to break and split apart. And now you increase just the brittle, you create basically a brittle zone. And it looks like, this is a longer trend that I'm speaking to here, but the earthquake activity in Texas has been increasing. These are all low magnitude earthquakes, but 5.4 isn't that tiny. 5.4 is, fairly significant earthquake. So there has been this trend of increasing seismicity in Texas. Also, if you weren't aware, there's this ongoing earthquake swarm in Puerto Rico. This has been going on now for years, and they don't really know why. So this is kind of a common feature too. But there's always earthquakes popping out from Puerto Rico. But for the past 7 days or so, nothing really to write home about as it relates to earthquake activity. But that could change with this 9th rotation of the coronal hole. And in general, we have this coronal hole high-speed stream about to sweep by. That could also, we've just been hit by these high-speed streams for a while now. And so we're still very much in an earthquake watch, though we've had a little bit of a respite for the past few days. But in general, you can see that trend change going from the beginning of 2025, when we had basically 3 earthquakes that were significant. This earthquake right there. This is actually a cumulative value, but that's basically from one magnitude 7 earthquake. Here we had a low or high magnitude 6 earthquake, and then the 7.6 off the Cayman Islands. And then since then, we see this shift that occurred once that 7th rotation and 8th rotation of the coronal hole went active. So we are still very much in this earthquake watch. Thankfully, we've had a bit of a respite for the past few days, but I'm not sure how long that's going to last. This geomagnetic storm that is likely going to start occurring is also probably going to be a little bit stronger than expected. Here we have our radiation belts going back to May 5th, and we notice our flux colors here. So if you're like blue, that's very low energy, low flux. If you're up in the reds, it's very high flux. Well, check out the radiation belts. They are like super fully charged right now. So we're effectively completely loaded up with energy in our plasmasphere. And when you get these solar storms to come in, they compress the plasmasphere and cause these ions to precipitate down into the ionosphere. an uppermost part of Earth's atmosphere, which is about 1% plasma, and is an ability to host these electric currents. And it's those that generate the magnetic field swings of a geomagnetic storm. Also, the geomagnetically induced currents in Earth's surface come from those changing electric currents in the ionosphere. So they're also very important as it relates to any sort of potential technological issues as it relates to a solar storm impact in a geomagnetic storm. So when you have a fully charged plasmasphere and you have something about to come in, you have to look at that a little bit more carefully because it's likely to be an enhanced effect versus if the radiation belts were decharged and you had a solar storm come in, you're not going to see as much of a generation of these powerful electric currents in the ionosphere. So we are fully charged up as it relates to our radiation belts at this moment in time. And so that is the update that I have for you. I don't think there's anything else to show you. Basically just we have that very large coronal hole, it appears, on the far side of the sun, soon to rotate into view. Before we get to the question and answer, I do want to make an announcement, a very cool announcement. I've been wanting to announce this for a while. It's finally available. The GAIA Earthing Sandals are now available on wildfreeorganic.com. So these are the best sandals that you can buy, basically. I mean, they're really well made. I mean, look, when you go to Greece or Italy, they have really good leather there, leatherware, wallets, purses, shoes, sandals. These are of a similar quality. You know, this is not some cheap Chinese stuff or just low quality things you buy at any store. Super high quality, all leather sandals. The bottom is water buffalo, super durable and thick. They use hemp on the stitching, so it's very durable. And these are totally flat, wide foot box, and they have this copper plug at the K1 meridian. So these are earthing sandals. The entire footbed is conductive. They also come with this etched design on the bottom for improved traction and grip. And as you wear them more, they will wear in as well the leather, but it's actually very durable, so it'll last you a long time. And what's so special about the GAIA Earthing Sandals is, as you'll see here, these straps right there are elastic, so they actually stretch to your foot and hold it in place. And so you can even like run in these, which is pretty incredible. Maybe not running a marathon, but if you just need to like do a quick jog or something, like it's possible without these flinging off your feet like every other flip-flop that's out there. Easy to put on. This doesn't irritate in between your big toe and your index toe. It's nice and thin, and leather is soft, so they're super comfortable. And basically, these are just the best earthing sandals that you can buy because the entire thing is conductive, whereas a lot of earthing sandals still use rubber on the bottom, which is what you don't want. So these are available on the website, wildfreeorganic.com, and just in time for summer for everyone in the Northern Hemisphere. They ship international, and you can actually get them now for 5% off the grand launch promotion using the code GAIA5, so that's GAIA 5, all one word, caps, and that'll give you 5% off your order till the end of May 17th when we have this coronal hole go Earth Geoeffective. So if you've been waiting on the earthing sandals, then now is the time to pick them up. You'll get a 5% discount. That also applies to any order on wildfreeorganic.com. So there's other things in the store. For example, we have the earthing boots. We have other earthing shoes here, a slip-on. This is a laced-up shoe, but we also have things like spirituality. I talk about this a lot. You guys love these products. I make them myself. Tranquility, fruit tea, herb coffee, vitality, electricity. Also my One Good Turtle children's book. That's a really, really nice story. So if you like to pick that up, I have those available as well. But the earthing sandals, the GAIA Earthing Sandals are now available. I love these things. One of the first earthing products that I was interested in were known as Earth Runners. And they're a good company. I like them. I'm not here to hate on them or anything. But they still use rubber on the bottom. And the straps that they use like a little bit of like a copper thread. And that's what brings the conductivity supposedly up from like the plug that they have. And then, those straps that they have sit there on the top of your foot. And, they're really easy to lose. And they're all right. These are way better. And they have these complicated strap designs, the Earth Runners, and it's like hard to take them on and off. These are super easy, slip on and off. They're stylish. And yeah, I love them. I'm so happy to have these finally available. So you can pick them up again, 5% off using the code GAIA5. That goes all the way till the end of May 17th. Now let us do our question and answer, because I'm sure you all have some questions. So if you do, you can type @Stefan Burns. I'll do my best to answer any questions that there are, and anyone that does a super thanks gets priority just because you're putting some money behind it. It's just the fair thing to do. And just like to give a shout out to Serenity Girl for the super sticker. Thank you so much for your support. Also, Pamela and Carol are now members, so thank you for that. And members do get access to some member-only videos on the channel. So if you sign up as a member, just for $2.99 a month, the Soul Tribe, you get access to all that content. So again, if you have a question, type @Stefan Burns. I'll answer them as best I can. Blizzard is asking, are plasma bulbs okay in our house/rooms? I'm not sure you're asking about plasma bulbs, like those Tesla plasma bulbs or coils. I'm not sure what you mean. Maybe if you mean that, yeah, I think all these things are fine. They even have like these like Tesla coils that you can buy, where it's like a globe of xenon gas, and you can turn it on. It'll create like this plasma torus that spins around. None of those things are going to be bad to keep in your home or anything like that. So I wouldn't worry about that. And Bachelor Sensei is asking, any risk of a nationwide blackout during the 9th rotation of that coronal hole? In general, the high-speed streams from coronal holes don't trigger the strongest geomagnetic activity. There have been coronal hole high-speed streams in the past that have triggered G3. Even, I think I have one example, I don't remember the exact date, that I saw the data though, it triggered G4 storm, I'm pretty sure. But that's pretty rare. Usually a coronal hole high-speed stream will go to a G2. For reference, with coronal hole rotation number 7, this triggered a G2 storm. That's a big coronal hole, only gave us a G2 storm. So it's really the severity of a geomagnetic storm that determines these geomagnetically induced currents, and if those are strong enough and a power grid is perhaps more susceptible, it's kind of weakened or whatever, or it's just bad luck, there's a whole bunch of factors that will determine whether you get a power grid to fail. So I don't think we're going to see nationwide blackouts. I'd be blown away if that was to occur. I think it's more about the severe weather and the earthquake risk, because we already have some advanced weather forecasting from NOAA for mid and end of May that's showing really heightened severe weather risk for the rest of the month of May. And we know these coronal hole high-speed streams seem to interact with our weather systems through the coupling of the heliosphere, the plastosphere, the ionosphere, and the atmosphere and the lithosphere, right? They're all connected together energetically. And then also this earthquake risk. So of course there's always a risk, but I think it's very, very low. I wouldn't worry about it personally. Sean is saying, thank you for your work. It's very appreciated. Well, thank you, Sean, for your support and for being here. And Tessa's asking, do they ship to Alaska? These do ship to Alaska. They ship to Hawaii, Alaska, continental US, international. They can go everywhere, basically. So anyone in the world can order them. The exchanges and returns are only possible in the United States. They're in US and Canada sizing, so make sure you do the correct sizing for that. Here's a question from Kokeli. Thank you for the super thanks, bro. Do you think it's possible for a CME to be almost invisible on the coronagraph if it is ejected from Earth center direct and very narrow and fast due to the occulting disk? Well, eventually, as it propagates out, it will widen in its signature. But yeah, it's an interesting idea because we have the coronagraph imagery, and let me pull that up so people can get a sense of what we're talking about here. So pull up our LASCO coronagraph, and this is just for the past 24 hours, so this isn't really anything crazy, but just to get people to see it. Here we have our LASCO coronagraph. The sun is denoted by this white circle, so they put a disk over it, and we see the solar wind outflows here. But basically, Kokele is asking if it's like a really, almost like a laser light where, you know, it's very precise and narrow. If it was going like this, perhaps it wouldn't even show up on the coronagraph. But in general, these things do widen out. So I do think some coronal mass ejections, they kind of blend into the normal outflows. And so they are harder to see. You know, we have these dynamics. Some of us call them like stealthy storms. So they're kind of hard to pick out in the coronagraph imagery. Not all of them show up super obviously. But in general, we're far enough away at 1 astronomical unit that even something that launches very precisely like this, it still should widen up enough for us to see it in the coronagraph as it expands outwards. And Craig is asking about earthing sheets for the bed. I have read about bed sheets that have these silver threads in them. It's like 10% silver threads. And you can use the ground on the power outlet. Will that work? And do they work safely? And a lot of people use them. I do not recommend using them with your ground system in your house, because the house is already electromagnetically polluted in general because of all the wiring, the 60 hertz noise in the United States, 50 hertz noise in Europe. And most systems are actually not wired so the ground is completely isolated from the rest. You have the hot, neutral, and the ground, and there's actually a lot of bleed onto the ground. So there are electric currents on that. Additionally, usually the ground stake for the system is right outside the house. And that whole area is just being pumped up with energy from the power grid and all the appliances and everything. Plus, the ground system in a house, or even worse, an apartment building, is basically a whole bunch of conductive wire. So it's like a giant antenna. And so it's picking up all the other radio signals and digital TV signals that are floating around and inducing electric currents within them, because any magnetic field induces an electric current in something that is electrically conductive, like metal. It's very conductive. So I think the best way, if you're going to use these sort of grounding products, which can be super useful, is to have your own ground rod that you place outside fairly far away from the earth, and you have a very simple copper wire that you connect to it, and you string that in and you connect that directly to your bed sheet. That is the best way to do it. I found that makes a significant difference. I remember when I was first experimenting with these earthing sheets, I remember laying down on one that was just plugged in normal. You know, I used the outlet tester and everything because I didn't know this stuff as well as I do now. And I remember feeling this crazy vibration take over my body, and that was the 60 hertz noise from the power grid. And at the time, I was like, this is weird, and didn't necessarily feel good. I was like, this feels a little odd. And so, no, I don't recommend using earthing products that plug into any sort of power system in the house. They are usually not electrically isolated. Even if they were, they'd still pick up all these signals that are induced within them because you have so many wires running through the house. So best is to have your own ground rod, place it far enough away outside, and just have one single wire that has a bit of a shield on it running to your earthing sheet. That's the best way to do it. I've talked about that on my channel. I have an earthing and grounding video playlist, so you can check that out. Go to my channel page, click playlist, and you can give that whole series a watch. I go on this stuff in depth. And John is asking, does the electron influx have an effect on the human energy field, and how? It more has an effect on the ionosphere and these electric currents, and therefore the geomagnetic field. And therefore, in some sort of kind of derivative way, perhaps that affects the biofield. We know Earth's magnetic field interacts with our heart and guides heart rate variability and more. But like in terms of, you know, electron flux out in the plasmasphere and us directly, I'd say it's a bit of a tenuous connection and not well supported. But, you know, through these kind of indirect means, it gets filtered down. It does have an effect on us to some degree. Significant or not, that probably depends on the person. Staying in the parasympathetic nervous system will get us through these changes, right? I had a lot of solar symptoms, but the more you stay in the parasympathetic nervous system, you cruise through the highs and lows. That's very, very wise. If you're more sympathetic, then your body in general is just more stressed. And so when you have these changing energies geophysically, you're going to respond to those in a more volatile manner. Whereas if you're in this rested and relaxed state, your body in general is less inflamed, and it's just calmer, and heart rhythms are more regulated and coherent, and You have these nice sine wave biorhythms in general. Your circadian rhythm is better. You're sleeping better, right? You're making better decisions. Your mind is clear. So yeah, staying parasympathetic is really, really key as it relates to solar activity. So if solar activity goes up, that's really a clue for you. And I talk about this all the time on the channel. Everyone knows this that watches regularly. I'm always advising people to rest, relax, do what's needed to keep that parasympathetic system strong. And then also to be mindful of your health and wellness in terms of what you eat, and then also exercise, because you do a hard workout, that acute stress, it's really easy to rest and relax afterwards because your body's like, yo, I just gave it my all, time to chill. Whereas if you haven't worked your body physically, you just kind of have this nervous, irritable kind of energy in the background because it needs to express itself. So make sure you're also doing some good exercise, whether it's just going out for a walk every day or riding the bike or going to the gym or yoga or Pilates, whatever. There's a whole bunch of things you can do. But the more parasympathetic you are in general, the healthier you'll be as it relates to enhanced solar activity. And that's a really important thing. So thanks for bringing that up. We do have just a couple new super thanks. So thank you to Eliane and also to Tom. Thank you so much. Matthew's asking if the sizes are true on the sandals. Yeah, I mean, some people have to return them, but in general, they're pretty true to size. The returns and exchanges I get are definitely not as frequent as people that just get the right size the first time. I wear a size 11. This is size 11. It was true to size for me first time. So, but everyone's different. If you're in the US, exchanges are possible, and it's a fairly seamless process. And Ron is asking about the Russian probe that's coming back today. So if you don't know, there's some old probe that the Russians sent off to Venus, I believe, that should be crashing back into the Earth today. I haven't really been tracking the news story that much because it's not much of a news story. It's just an old thing that's going to burn up in the atmosphere. It's not like it's going to detonate with a nuclear explosion or anything, as far as I know. So I don't have any update for you on that. And I think it's just kind of an interesting thing, but not really like a super active news story that you need to be on the edge of your seat for. And Anna is asking, do solar flares affect other objects in the solar system? The answer is yes. For example, back at the end of March and early April, we had a whole bunch of activity that was launched towards Jupiter. Jupiter at 5.2 astronomical units. It takes a little bit longer for these solar storms to reach it, but it's a massive electromagnetic system. There's huge lightning strikes and storms across Jupiter, so it takes in that solar energy. It definitely would affect, Jupiter and Saturn and Uranus and Neptune. They all have aurora that can occur, just like the Earth, which is a geomagnetic storm. So they can all have these sort of magnetic storms as well. And so yeah, other objects like the gas giants are affected by these sort of solar storms. Same with Mercury, Venus, and Mars. They have interesting energetic dynamics that occur during solar storm impacts. In terms of lesser objects like asteroids and such, I mean, there's going to be something that happens, changes to the electric field and therefore induce magnetospheres. But in general, the smaller the object, probably the less significant of an effect it would be. But it's kind of an unknown. We don't have that much information on a lot of this stuff. But with the planets, we have a pretty good idea of what happens. Baby's just saying, thanks for your live streams. You're always such a positive force and a good boost to remember and be mindful of what's to be joyful and just to be kind of in a positive mindset no matter what. So thank you for that. And Primordial is asking, are you familiar with Göbekli Tepe? And yeah, I've been there twice. I spent 2 days at Göbekli Tepe. So I went to Turkey actually to meet the manufacturers of these shoes back in March and also in May of 2024. Yeah, 2024. So last year, basically. About 1 year ago, I went there to visit them twice. And on the first visit, I went to Göbekli Tepe twice. So I went there for 1 day and then I went back for a second day because 1 day I wanted to really feel into energies. 1 day isn't enough. I actually have a video on Göbekli Tepe on the YouTube. So you can type that into the search bar on my channel page and you should get a video to pop up. So yeah, it's a really interesting site. Very yang energy dominant. So it's like a very masculine energy I felt there. And, from basically, basically the start of human civilization as we know. It's a really interesting site. Sphere Artist is asking, what's your opinion on the UK experiments to reflect sunlight? I did a live stream on that. So if you go to my channel page, go to live streams, you'll see the thumbnail says Earth electrification has begun. Give that video a watch to talk about the UK experiments on dimming the sun. And I think it's really stupid and really short-sighted, and you can hear more of my thoughts there. So Co Kelly, want to send you $15 total for all you give. I saw recently 2024 had a record number of X flares since the year 2000 of 54 total. Yeah, solar cycle 25 has been very active. We've had a little bit of a drop now in X flares. We haven't had one since basically, I think it was March 28th. Maybe there was one that occurred in April. But regardless, it's been a while since we've had X flare. But in general, solar cycle 25 has been very, very active. Not as active as some of the solar cycles, but still pretty significant. And a big super thanks from Curtis. Thank you so much. Love the streams and the information. I use it to coordinate my stream of the sun in H alpha on my other channel. So that's awesome. That's great. I'm glad that I can be of a help for you. And thanks for doing your own solar observing and posting that online. It's good. We need more people to do that. Eventually, I'll have my own solar observation center, I'm sure, once I get probably my own house and can put up a telescope. But I'm glad that others are doing that. So thank you for doing that, sir. Susan's asking, how are you seeing the far side of the sun? Let me show you. I talked about this earlier in the live stream, but I'll just show you one more time. I have the link to this in the video description. And not that, right here. Here we have our solar orbiter data page. And right now, solar orbiter, which is a probe that orbits around the sun, it's exactly opposite Earth right now. It's nearly 180 degrees opposite, just slightly off of that. We have the Earth right there. There's the sun. There's solar orbiter. That's how we're getting imagery of the far side right now. And there's actually one other thing I didn't show. So I can bring that up right now. It wasn't super important, but might as well show it while we're here. And we'll just click that off. Here we have our sunspots. I did show it just for a second, but I didn't really talk about it. Sunspot numbers are low right now. We see this big guy that's about to rotate out, 4079. We have this one about to rotate in. And you'll notice they're about the same position. So right as this rotates off, this one's going to rotate in. They're 180 degrees opposite right now. So that's interesting. And in general, we see more sunspots on the far side than we do on the Earth-facing side. So sunspot numbers are low right now. As these rotate out, these are going to rotate in, and sunspot numbers should go up. That seems to be an important component of the earthquake connection. Because I think it's due to how these sunspots increase extreme ultraviolet X-ray flux that charges the ionosphere. And then when you get the sunspot numbers to decline and that X-ray flux diminishes, that's when you seem to have these earthquakes pop off. There's like this loading effect that occurs from the enhanced ionospheric currents. And then once those start to diminish, it seems that earthquakes kind of respond. So it's multifactorial. There's connections between the solar wind density and these earthquakes. There's connections between proton flux and earthquakes. There's connections between sunspot numbers and earthquakes. We don't exactly know the mechanism. There's probably multiple mechanisms. Certainly there are. So we've been having low sunspot numbers. This has been the biggest one by far on the sun, but it's been fairly inactive. That sunspot number is about to go up, and we'll see what happens with this sunspot group right there, whether it grows, dies, whatever, but that's soon to rotate into view. So that's how we're seeing the far side of the sun. Is because of this data portal that ESA has for solar orbiter, and this is linked in the video description. Nakshatra is saying, what's your opinion on Hinduism, considering all the terms relating to chakras, third eye, and all meditation techniques come from it? Yeah, I think Hinduism is great. I'm not one that buys into any single religious system. So like Christianity, or let's say Hinduism, or Buddhism, or Islam, I think there's benefits to all of them. I've gone to the Buddhist temples, I've gone to the Hindu temples, I've gone to the mosque, I've gone to the churches, the cathedrals. I go to all of them and I pray. So, you know, I just am looking for the kind of the bigger picture. And I think there's a lot that Hinduism gets right. And it's one of the oldest spiritual systems out there. So I think there's a lot of good stuff there. But am I like practicing Hinduism? Not directly, because again, I don't believe in any single one religion. I kind of am more interested in like the larger picture. But yeah, in general, good things. In general, I'm a fan. Stefan for president. Maybe. I'm getting close. I could run next time. I could run in 2028. I'd be very, very young as it relates to presidents, but I think we need that. We'll see. I would only want to do it though, just because I feel like we actually need people to step up. Like true leaders need to step up, not just the politicians who are greedy and want power over people. Like it's a responsibility that you really actually don't want to take on. And those are the people that probably should. Like George Washington, he like didn't want to be president, but he did because he realized it was the right thing to do. Then when they offered him like, hey, can you do president again? He said no. He's like, it's time for someone else to do it. We don't want to turn this into a new monarchy. I would only want to do it because of that. I feel like, there would be a lot that I would need to learn, but I feel like it'd be pretty good. I feel like it'd be pretty good. I have a good head on my shoulders, so. But no, I actually wouldn't want to do it. I would definitely not want to be president. I would only do it because it'd probably be the right thing to do. Or like in general, someone who actually has the best interests of their countrymen and the world at large to be president is what we need. I'm not really seeing any more questions, so I think we're going to call it there. Susan's saying, what are the name of the sandals again? The GAIA Earthing Sandals. So they're available on the website, wildfreeorganic.com. You go to the store, GAIA Earthing Sandals. You can use the code GAIA5 for 5% off till the end of May 17th. And yeah, thank you all for joining the live stream. We'll see what happens with this geomagnetic storm that we have, it seems, rolling in right now at this moment in time, just getting started. And then also this big coronal hole. Looks like it's gotten larger on the far side. And so that is going to be geoeffective around May 17th, maybe a little bit later, but right around that time when we have the critical planetary geometry, Uranus Cazimi, we have a full moon coming up on the 12th. So I believe that's Monday, we have a full moon. That's significant. And this storm is coming in as the moon is entering into the magnetotail. Radiation belts are fully charged. I don't think this is going to be super crazy, but I think it's kind of start to build that energy volatility leading up to the full moon, then also even beyond that to this coronal hole going geoeffective around the 17th with that critical planetary geometry. So now's the time to practice some earthing and grounding. Make sure you go outside, connect to Earth, regulate and guide your biorhythms or circadian rhythm, reduce inflammation, charge, all that. I'm about to go outside today, go to the beach. It's a wonderful day out here. So I hope that you have wonderful weather as well, wherever you are. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, I've been your host, Stefan Burns. Wishing all of you well, sending you lots of love and light, and I'll see you all in the next video.